Oi sir, before we dive in, if this kind of stuff makes your brain itch, hit that subscribe button. You're gonna want more of this. You think you're in control right now. You really do. You're watching this video, making a conscious choice to pay attention, processing every word I say through that logical, rational mind of yours, the one you trust. But here's the thing nobody told you growing up. That version of you, the calm, deliberate thinker, is barely running the show. Right now, while you sit there convinced you're thinking clearly, a completely different machine is already operating in the background, and it made at least a dozen judgments about this video, about me, about whether this was worth your time, before you were even aware of it. It happened in milliseconds. And the wildest part? You had absolutely no idea. The human mind isn't one thing. Decades of psychological research have cracked open something that most people never learn to see. Inside your head, there are essentially two different operating systems running simultaneously. One is fast, almost shockingly fast. It fires instantly, runs on instinct, pattern recognition, and gut feeling. It doesn't ask permission, it doesn't wait, it just acts. The second system is slower, more deliberate. It shows up when things get complicated, when you're solving a hard problem, weighing a decision, or consciously forcing yourself to think something through. It's the voice in your head that sounds like you. Here's what blows people's minds when they first hear this. The slow one, the you that feels like the pilot, almost always just follows the instructions handed to it by the fast one. You don't choose your first impression of a person. You don't choose whether you trust a stranger's face. You don't choose whether an idea feels right or wrong before you examine it. That's already been decided for you by a process happening so deep and so fast. Your consciousness just picks up the receipt afterward and tells itself it made the decision. One of the most disorienting moments in modern psychology happened when researchers realized this, that the conscious mind, that rational interior voice we all identify with, is more like a press secretary than an actual decision maker. It spins the story after the fact. It makes the judgment sound logical, even when the logic came last. Think about the last time you disliked someone almost immediately. Maybe it was their tone, the way they walked into the room, something in their eyes. Did you choose to feel that, or did it just arrive? Now think about the last time you made a decision that you later rationalized with 100 logical reasons. But if you're really honest, you knew what you were going to do the moment you felt it in your gut. That gap between when you felt something and when you explained it, that's the space where most of your life is actually being run. The invisible system, the fast mind. And once you see it, really see it, nothing looks quite the same. Here's where it gets fascinating. This fast system isn't broken, it's not a flaw. It's ancient, elegant machinery built over hundreds of thousands of years to keep us alive. It processes an almost incomprehensible amount of information every second. Facial expressions, tone of voice, environmental cues, body language, patterns in language, and it compresses all of it into a feeling that you then call intuition, or a hunch, or a read on someone. Most of the time it's incredibly useful. Your ability to navigate a crowded room, sense tension in a relationship, recognize danger before you can articulate why. That's the fast mind working exactly as designed. But sometimes it takes shortcuts that lead you straight into the wall, and the terrifying part is this: when it does, you don't feel the error. You feel certainty. The same sensation that tells you fire is hot also tells you that you understand a person, a situation, or a choice, even when you're completely off base. Confidence and correctness travel in the same car. You can't always tell them apart from the inside. So what does this actually look like in your real life? Because this isn't just lab theory. This is happening to you, today, yesterday, in every conversation you had last week. Let me paint you a picture. You're in a meeting or maybe a conversation at a party, and someone brings up a topic you've heard about before. You haven't thought deeply about it. You don't really know the full picture, but the moment they mention it, something in you locks in. You have a feeling about it, an opinion. It feels obvious. Where did that opinion come from? One of the most surprising findings in cognitive science is something called the availability effect. Your brain judges how likely, how common, how important something is based on how easily it can pull up an example, not based on actual statistics or evidence. If you heard about 3 plane crashes on the news this month, flying feels dangerous, even if the actual risk hasn't changed by a single decimal point. If your neighbor's house was broken into last year, your whole neighborhood feels unsafe, even if crime rates dropped. Your fast mind isn't checking the data, it's checking, how vividly can I picture this? And whatever it can picture most vividly, it treats as most real, most likely, most true. This is why fear spreads faster than facts. This is why the thing you most recently heard about feels more urgent than things that have been quietly real for decades. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. This isn't a quirk of stupid people or easily misled people. The research shows it applies equally to experts, to doctors assessing risk, to judges deciding sentences, to investors evaluating opportunities. Intelligence doesn't immunize you. Experience doesn't fully protect you. Because the fast mind doesn't care how smart you are. It operates below the level where IQ lives. Now add another layer. There's a force your mind uses constantly, so constantly you've never noticed it, called anchoring. Here's how it works. The first number, the first piece of information, the first impression you receive about something becomes a kind of anchor that everything after it is measured against. Experiments found that if you ask people to spin a wheel and then estimate how many countries are in Africa, completely unrelated things, people who landed on a higher number consistently estimated more countries. People who landed on a lower number estimated fewer. A random wheel affecting serious judgments. This happens in salary negotiations, in price assessments, in medical diagnoses. The first number that enters the room becomes the invisible center of gravity that pulls every other number toward it. Think about what that means for every negotiation you've ever had, every price you've accepted, every first offer that seemed to set the range, even when you told yourself you weren't influenced by it. You were. We all were. But here's where the research takes a real turn, something researchers discovered that genuinely surprised them. It's not just abstract judgment that gets hijacked. It's your social judgment, your read on people, your sense of who to trust. There's a phenomenon called the halo effect. When you perceive one positive quality in a person, maybe they're physically attractive, or they carry themselves with confidence, or they said something smart, your fast mind immediately starts assuming other good qualities. Suddenly they seem more competent, more honest, more trustworthy, before they've demonstrated any of that. The reverse is equally true. One negative impression, and the whole person gets dimmed. One awkward moment, and their credibility takes a hit they may never recover from in your mind, even if it was completely unrelated to the thing you're judging them on. This is the part nobody likes to sit with, because it means we are constantly judging people, not based on who they actually are, but based on incomplete, emotionally weighted, pattern-matched impressions assembled in fractions of a second. And then we defend those impressions as if we reasoned our way there. If this is already shifting something in how you think, drop a comment below. I want to know what's hitting different for you. And yeah, a like helps more people find this. Now here's where it gets deep, because we've been talking about individual judgment, one mind making errors in isolation. But humans aren't isolated. We're wired for groups. And when you put these mental patterns into a social environment, with other people, with belonging, with the need to fit in and be accepted, the effects multiply in ways that are genuinely startling. Researchers studying group dynamics discovered something that upended a lot of assumptions about intelligence and performance. They ran experiments with teams, sometimes highly skilled professionals, sometimes ordinary people, and asked them to collaborate on challenging tasks. What they found destroyed the idea that smarter individuals automatically make smarter groups. The groups that performed best weren't the ones loaded with credentials and expertise. They were the ones where people felt safe, safe enough to be honest, safe enough to admit confusion, safe enough to offer a half-formed idea without being afraid of looking stupid. When that safety was missing, something fascinating and troubling happened. Skilled, intelligent people started managing their social status more than they managed the actual problem. They performed competence rather than practicing it. They withheld uncertainty because uncertainty felt dangerous. They went along with directions they privately doubted because the cost of speaking up felt too high. The fast mind, again, making decisions before the slow mind could weigh in. Because belonging is older than logic, the need to be accepted by a group is so deeply wired in us that it operates like a survival instinct, because for most of human history, it literally was. Being cast out from a tribe was a death sentence. The brain never fully unlearned that. So when you're in a room where voicing a dissenting opinion might cost you social status, your nervous system treats it with the same weight as a physical threat. You freeze. You agree when you disagree. You nod when you're lost. And the whole group, filled with people doing the same thing, marches confidently toward a conclusion that nobody actually fully believed in. There's a name for this. Researchers who studied it found that a single person, one individual, playing the role of the cynical, checked-out, negative presence in a group could reduce that group's overall performance by 30 to 40%, just by being there, just by radiating disengagement. Because the fast mind is contagious. Mood spreads, energy spreads, anxiety spreads, and not through conscious decision, through the same ancient signaling systems your brain uses to read whether a situation is safe or dangerous. When you walk into a room where someone is frightened, your body reacts before your mind has processed anything. When you're around someone who is relaxed and confident, you begin to mirror them, not because you decided to, but because your nervous system is reading thousands of micro signals and adjusting accordingly. This is called social priming, and it's happening in every interaction you've ever had. The tone of a conversation gets set in the first 90 seconds, often by the person who speaks first, or the person with the most social authority, or sometimes just the person who shows up with the most charged emotional state. And everyone else? They adjust to match, without knowing they did. Here's the other side of that coin, and this is the part that gives me genuine hope. That same contagious quality that lets one negative person drain a group of 30% of its performance works exactly the same way in the other direction. One person, consistently warm, genuinely curious, making every other person in the room feel like what they have to say actually matters, can transform a group's output in ways that seem disproportionate, almost impossible to explain just by looking at what they're actually doing. Because they're not doing big things, they're doing small things, repeatedly, reliably, with full attention. A question that invites someone in, a pause that lets someone finish, a moment of acknowledgement that costs nothing and means everything. These micro-behaviors are building something that goes beneath the level of strategy or skill. They're building trust. And trust is what lets the slow mind finally get to work, because when people feel safe, they stop managing appearances and start actually thinking. So where does this leave you? You came into this video, maybe without realizing it, looking for something, maybe a confirmation of something you suspected, maybe an explanation for something you've experienced, maybe just a feeling that there's more going on inside your own mind than the official story you tell yourself. There is way more. But here's what I want you to take away, because I think this is the part that actually changes something. The existence of these patterns, the fast mind, the anchoring, the halo effect, the social contagion, doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean your judgment is worthless or that you can't trust yourself. It means you're human, in exactly the way humans were built to be. The question is, now that you can see the machinery, what do you do with that? The researchers who spent careers mapping these cognitive patterns didn't just document them as curiosities. They were looking for something practical, a way to work with the mind instead of pretending it's something it's not. And what they found was that awareness itself is a kind of intervention, not perfect, not instant, but real. When you know about anchoring, you can pause before you accept the first number in a negotiation. You can ask yourself, would I still feel this way if I'd heard a completely different opening? When you know about the halo effect, you can notice when you're falling in love with a person's impression rather than their actual record. You can ask, what am I not seeing because of what I already felt? When you know about social contagion, you can start to notice when the mood you're feeling in a group conversation isn't actually yours, when you've absorbed it from the room. And you can ask, is this what I actually think, or am I mirroring? These aren't tricks, they're not hacks. They're the slow mind finally getting to participate in conversations the fast mind used to dominate unchallenged. And here's the final piece, the one that research keeps circling back to from different directions, from cognitive science to organizational behavior to decades of experiments with groups. The most important predictor of good judgment isn't IQ, it isn't experience, it isn't confidence. It's the willingness to be uncertain. The people who make the best decisions over time, who are least likely to be blindsided by their own cognitive shortcuts, are the ones who hold their conclusions loosely, who say I might be wrong not as a social nicety, but as an actual operating principle, who treat their own first impressions as data points rather than verdicts. Because here's the deep truth, your fast mind is extraordinarily good at recognizing patterns. That's its genius, but patterns from the past, not the current reality in front of you. Every time you trust a pattern completely, you risk missing what's actually there. Every time you leave even a small crack open, a little space for what if I'm missing something, your slow mind gets invited in, and that's when the real thinking starts. You've been doing this your entire life without realizing the rules. Now you know there are rules. Now you know there's a game being played inside your own head, and the house, your fast mind, has always had a built-in advantage. But knowing the rules of the game, that changes everything. Not because it makes you perfect, not because it guarantees better decisions every time, but because it makes you honest about what you don't know. And honest people, genuinely, uncomfortably honest people, make fewer catastrophic errors than confident ones. The most dangerous version of you isn't the one who doubts too much. It's the one who never doubts at all. Now, somewhere out there, someone else is watching a video just like this one, going through the same mental shift you just went through. Feeling slightly off balance, not in a bad way, but in the way that happens right before something settles into place differently, and they're going to carry this out into a conversation, or a decision, or a moment where their fast mind would normally run unchallenged, and this time, just maybe, the slow mind gets a word in. That small thing, that tiny shift, repeated enough times, that's not nothing, that's the whole game. Tana says, if something in this video made you pause, that pause is worth something. Share it with one person who'd get it, and if you want to go deeper on how the mind really works, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.